Let's talk about the most exciting thing that's happened in the past couple weeks, which was Father's Day, right? I mean,
Father's Day, it was a bang out this year. They sold out at all the stadiums. There were all
lawnmowers sold out.
The lawnmower stocks just went through the roof. There were all those just naked fathers parading themselves across the stage on the catwalks. It was a little disturbing, slightly erotic.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I had a great Father's Day. Saw Deadpool 2.
Fuck yeah, that's a good present.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen it, so my dad and I went to go see that, and that was a lot of fun. Very raunchy, as one could imagine. I actually knew quite a bit about the movie before I saw it, but clearly that's not what I was talking about when I said some big things had happened the past couple weeks, because even though Father's Day is great, and everybody wants to ride a lawnmower and drink beer, E3 just happened, and we did a prediction episode, and I'm not even going to try and remember what we predicted to say.
Oh, I remember a lot of it.
We could spend a whole episode talking about how we were wrong. I could start by saying Metroid Prime 4 was not announced.
Were we really that wrong? I feel like we got the basic ethos of what E3 was going to be down, and I'm sorry, guys. Brash he's gonna go cry in the corner for a minute because Metroid Prime 4 wasn't shown off.
It hurts. Why does it hurt so much? Let's get started. So there's a billion things we could say, a million trillion things we could say, but I think what would make the most sense, if you agree with me, is to start with the big three. The big boys: Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, and then drill our way down to some of the other, like Ubisoft. So let's start with the easiest one, Nintendo, because it was like literally half the presentation was just Smash. So in terms of the presentation aspect, I thought Nintendo had a really tight run. Some people, here's the thing: if you don't care about Smash, you would have hated that presentation. You know what I mean? Like, I saw somebody on Twitter, one of my friends was just like, "Oh my god, I don't care." But for most people that are Switch owners and Nintendo fans, most people at least care a little bit about Smash. And so learning, like, there's all the characters from previous games, and here's all the tweaks. I mean, it did get a little bit maybe too nitty gritty in my opinion. They did give a lot of detail that I don't necessarily know was necessary for half of your presentation. But by the same token, I think they kind of had to make sure people understood that this was a new game, not just a port.
The way I see it is people get so mad at E3 for not being enough about the games. I really appreciate Nintendo. I can understand if you're complaining about the focus on Smash. That's something, I can't help you with that. If you're not into Smash, you're not into Smash, and that's fine. But if you are, I can totally understand this approach of just getting right to the games. What do they do? How do they play? How do they feel? And just like you said, we want you to know that this is going to be a new game. We're retooling certain things. It's going to feel a little different. I actually kind of appreciated it, even as someone who, isn't the biggest fighting game person, someone who doesn't go really deep into the minutia of everything. I thought it was interesting seeing their thought process and what they wanted to do with things going forward.
Yeah, and they announced some other things like Fire Emblem, which I've never played any of those games. Super Mario Party, which there were some interesting things displayed there, like the ability to play with multiple Switches, and it looks as though they may have gotten rid of the car, which was like a common complaint for a lot of people. I played Mario Party 10 like once, and it was fine, but it's really hard to recapture the magic of 1, 2, and 3, Mario Party 1, 2, and 3. So I think the Switch has the best chance of making something like a unique Mario Party just because of its portability and the fact that you can play with multiple Switches. I could see that being like a great con game, like sitting down with people and like playing a couple rounds of Super Mario, especially if there's a way to just get to the mini games you want to play. That would be an instant sell for I think a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then Fortnite was announced, which, cool. I already have it on PS4, so I can't play it on Switch. No, I'm just kidding. I actually didn't create an Epic account, so that was a good move on my part because
smart.
That's a whole other topic, which I don't want to open that can of worms right now. I think with Nintendo, there's the bigger problems are what they didn't announce more than what they did. You know what I mean? Like you said, no one can really fault them for spending so much time on Smash. It's obviously one of the biggest games that people are looking forward to. I think they spent a little time on Octopath Traveler. I think they did show some new footage from that. That's actually a game I would like to take a second to talk about, because I played the demo recently. I played about an hour of the game, and if I could describe this game in like one word, it's cozy. It just feels like cozy, like the art style, the dialogue, the way that the game world is built. It just feels really cozy, and the music is like, the score is so goddamn good. It's like I could just sit there and listen to the score. I really would encourage anyone that owns a Switch, go ahead and download the demo for the game from the Nintendo shop, because it's free. I think it's only 1.5 gigs, and you can play for up to 3 hours. And most importantly, you can import your save to the full game when it comes out. So you can play whatever character you want and get a feel for the game. And then when the game comes out, you don't have to redo the time that you spent on the demo, which I think is pretty cool. And that's something I would like to say for Nintendo that I applaud them for doing, putting out demos for some of their bigger titles. Like I played the Mario Tennis Aces demo, and I think that's something that's really cool. And I don't know if it's necessarily unique. I don't really pay attention to the PS4 demos because I don't know why, but for some reason it just feels easier on the Switch to get on, and they pay more attention to that stuff. Now, we could talk about, the lack of Metroid Prime 4. We could talk about the lack of announcing, Pokemon. But there is one caveat I want to throw out before we start getting on the negatives for Nintendo, and that is that they have the unique position where they release a lot of information at other times of the year. So just because a game was not announced at E3, that doesn't mean it's not coming out this year. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't necessarily mean that Metroid Prime 4 won't come out this year. It's just that they decided they want to have the most eyes on, Super Smash Brothers. And I think that's smart. Now, the one thing, if anything we can criticize them for, it's the lack of detail on their online services and how woefully inadequate they are compared to other platforms. So in that aspect, I think you could definitely penalize them. But again, I mean, we've already talked about this. We've already talked about how Nintendo is just, they're doing their own thing, and to expect them, it's not that I want to give them a pass. It's just that that's not their strength. And in a way, it kind of makes sense that they wouldn't want to take a lot of time to talk about something that's clearly not a strength of theirs during like the most important gaming conference of the year, arguably. So I just hope that in the future, very soon, we get a lot more details about this online service. And more importantly, when it comes time to pay that money, and that they at least give us what they're saying they are, and perhaps even add on to what they're planning on giving us right away out of the gate. Because right now, I mean, I don't know. You feel free to chime in,
Well, I feel like a lot of people have been saying that, there are off years for E3, and that this is one of those off years.
I can see that.
And yeah, I can see that to an extent. I can't really fault them for it. I feel like, there's just some years where you just don't have that much to show. You just don't have that many announcements to make, or you want to show things at different parts of the year. But all in all, I think Nintendo did a good job. I kind of feel like I put them on a totally different scale because of just how weird they are and how different they are.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a bit of bias there, I suppose. But I feel like all in all, they did a good job. I was honestly really psyched to see them bring back all the characters from Smash. I never thought they would do that because, fighting games are all about the balance and all about trying to manage a roster and just trying to figure out how much work they're going to have to do to balance all these characters is kind of mind-blowing to me. So, yeah, all in all, I think Nintendo did a pretty good job.
I would agree. And again, it's not that we aren't judging them the same way. It's just that Nintendo, their core message, their core focus is different than Microsoft and PlayStation. And there's no reason to feel like we should judge them by the same metrics, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like they make quality games. They are focused on they are focused on finding fun and innovative ways to play games, and not necessarily chasing like the latest tech or necessarily, let's say, the latest trends. And
unless it's Fortnite.
Yeah, unless it's Fortnite. Reggie was real psyched to play that. Let's move on to Sony then, since we kind of both agree it was good. I was a little wishing for other things, but to your point, before we get on to Sony and Microsoft being off year, this E3 being kind of an off year, there's a reason for that, and that's because the PS4 and the Xbox One are in their twilight years. There's only a year or two left for them, I think. So there's not
That's
really.
So weird to think about, isn't it?
Really, those consoles came out 5 years ago, and the other thing you were saying is that most of the big titles we already knew about. Like, there really weren't any huge surprises for Sony or Microsoft except for like Crackdown 3. And we knew Smash was coming for Nintendo. So that was the thing. Like, all 4 of Sony's major titles, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, The Last of Us, and what's the other one I'm not thinking of right now? Spider-Man. We knew about all those games. This is just a deeper look into those games, which is fine. But I think that excitement that you were talking about, where it's like, oh, what? I didn't know that was coming out. Oh my God. Like, it just wasn't there this E3. The only time I got that really was Elder Scrolls 6, ironically. So, moving on to Sony, I just mentioned the 4 games.
Let's talk about, before we get into the games about Sony, can we just talk about how bizarre that fucking press conference was? Like, can we just take a step back and realize that shit happened and we let it happen?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't really watch Microsoft's press conference, like in its entirety. I watched Sony's and Nintendo, so I can't really compare them to Xbox or to the Xbox presentation. I will say, for both, was it 2 or 3 musical? It was 2 musical interludes. I was just like, at first, when the guy with the banjo came out, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Get us like ready for the game. And I expected like gameplay footage to start rolling. No.
Right?
And then I was like, okay. And then it was like, I heard a part that I'm like, oh, he's coming to an end. And like, no. He just kept going for like another minute and a half. And I feel bad because that poor dude is just sitting there on stage while like thousands of people are there waiting for something else to happen. And millions of people around the world are like, where's the gameplay? Like,
do you know how you can sum up the Sony press conference? It was the industry equivalent of smelling your own farts. They won this generation. We all know that.
Yeah.
The whole thing just came off as arrogant, trying to feel artsy, all those musical interludes, you know what the funniest thing is, though? How they showed, I think it was The Last of Us. That's what they began with. They began with The Last of Us. Mm-hmm. And they decided to move the entire audience.
That's such a bad idea.
What the hell were they thinking?
Because what happened, I think, I didn't see the Xbox conference, but from the couple conferences I saw, Sony's, in terms of the overall structure and presentation, was the worst. Because not only did they start out with a dude just playing a banjo for 3 minutes, albeit he was a good banjo player, like, people have been waiting all fucking year for this conference, and then you start out with a dude playing a banjo. It's like you're holding us hostage, and then you show the gameplay footage, which was great, and then you wait. Like, the worst part was when they had that interlude between Last of Us and then Ghost of Tsushima, and they just kept showing those people talking, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, because they had to move everybody from that one location. By the way, the only reason they had that location was to tie in with the church that was in The Last of Us. I was like, this is fucking stupid. Like, whoever came up with this decision needs to be bitch slapped, because this was a bad decision. You just killed arrogance. You killed the momentum for your conference, like,
exactly,
big time, because you get everybody excited, and then just like, boom.
It's the arrogance and decadence of E3 personified in its worst form.
I wouldn't go that
that's all you
far.
can say about it.
I think you're more upset about it than I am, but I'm
not upset about it. I found it hilarious. I'm just thinking, like, I guess the reason why I'm harping on it so much is because there was no reason for it. Like, you could say, like here's the thing, like, there were other things in the E3 conference that you could say were kind of a distraction, but, didn't take away too much. Like, Bethesda, for example, with Andrew WK, doing that whole rock concert, or the Skyrim Very Special Edition, that whole skit with Keegan-Michael Key.
Yeah.
And, You can say, oh, that takes away a bit from the games, but, they were relatively short. They obviously didn't, they weren't very taxing on the audience, but then you see Sony going for at least 2 musical interludes and then spending like 10 minutes trying to funnel the audience from one venue to another.
More than 10. It was like 15.
Oh yeah, I'm lowballing it here. But and it's, I guess it's like my point is, what's the point? Was that really worth it?
I felt like it was a cool idea if they either had set it to gameplay footage or if they had cut it way down. So there was like a short interlude before the game footage hit. Like 30 seconds to a minute would have been cool to get people hyped and to get them in the mood and then to start rolling footage. Same goes for Ghost of Tsushima. Instead, they were like these full performances, which are nice, but not when you're waiting to see gameplay footage. So anyways, we can obviously talk more. Like, we kind of established the fact that the presentation itself was balls. And they really dropped the ball on that. As far as the footage goes, dude, that transition when I think she said something about like not being afraid of Ellie or not being afraid of her, and then they cut to her like killing somebody. I was like, what a transition. Like, that cut from the dancing to her taking out people was just flawless.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
it was well done all around.
Truthfully, the game footage looks great. We'll have to wait and see if the animations are that good, because I mean, I couldn't tell if it was scripted or not. I know. Ghost of Tsushima, exciting. I love the visual style, and particularly the one-on-one fight. I hate to use this dirty word. It felt cinematic, but in the best way possible, where you have the action framed. Not necessarily that you are watching something and passive, more that you're framed and that you have a good view of what you need to have, but it's limiting your ability. Like, it's kind of focusing you, or it's forcing you to focus on one particular aspect of the game. So I really, really enjoy the look of that game.
Samurai are coming back.
Yeah, they are.
If that's one thing you can take away from E3, it's that Samurai are fucking coming back. We had 3. We had Neo. We had Neo 2. We had Ghost of Tsushima. We had what's the third one? The one from
Shadows
Software.
Die Twice.
Yes, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Yeah, but just for Ghost of Tsushima, which out of the 3 Samurai things is the one that I'm most into. You know that's an open world game, right?
Oh, I know.
Have we ever seen open world Japan? Like, I'm not even that much into Japan compared to a lot of gamers. I've always been more into, as you know, Egypt or China or India, stuff like that. Sometimes Greece. I've never been that into Japan, but there's kind of a novelty to it in a certain way.
I mean, just what you saw of that, like the background, it looks gorgeous.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, it looks like the presentation is gorgeous, and I don't just mean that in a, I don't know. It not just graphically, but the art style and the way that the landscape is presented. It kind of, in a way that, Breath of the Wild was breathtaking. Heyo. That game had some really well designed areas. Like, especially, I'm sure they chose those vantage points for a reason, to show you, like, hey, look, there's all these different regions you can go to, and there's these beautiful fields of grass swaying, and then, beautiful trees and all this other stuff. But anyways, I think we're on the same page for that game. I'm really excited and looking forward to it. Death Stranding, I don't feel like we should talk about it because I don't know what to say. Like, I still don't know what it is. Say something.
I don't know what it is, but I know what the fuck to say about this game. So first off, can we all just agree about how good that game looks? I know it's way too early, but I really like the fact that we saw some gameplay. We got a sense of what this game is. We know that it's possibly some kind of open world thing. We saw some heavy implications. There will be combat. There's stealth elements.
Yeah, the stealth part was great.
Yeah, we got to see this landscape that looks like Earth.
Alien, almost, though.
But alien, yeah. And just in terms of visuals and what we got from a gameplay perspective, I would say that trailer was a win for the consumer because we got to see the game in action. Yeah. Now, as for what the fuck this Lynchian mind rape is about, I have a lot of theories, most of them stolen from other people. So, the one consistent theme throughout this trailer is time distortion.
Okay.
Something has happened to the world that's caused some sort of time distortion.
Okay, I could buy that.
So they keep talking about, like, this is after watching the trailer like 30 times and actually really listening to every word, because they specifically talk about something called the time fold.
Okay.
So there's a lot going on with time distortion. And we see the main character, whose name, by the way, is also the name of that organization that we've been seeing in the other trailers, Bridges. If you guys have been paying attention to the other Death Stranding trailers, all the way from the first one, there's this weird emblem that a lot of characters are wearing that's called Bridges. It's this weird emblem that looks like the United States with like a web going across it, kind of like a network. And it says the United Cities of America. And it's called Bridges.
Interesting.
So, and the main character's last name is Bridges. So, what a lot of people are speculating is that this is either a prequel, what we were seeing in that trailer, and this man will go on to, you know, be a very important person, or he's related to somebody who is. And one of the other very important things is we saw a photograph that he had of a family. Mm-hmm. And then we saw, remember that woman at the very end?
Yeah.
And why the game seemed to, why the trailer seemed to focus on her, even though, like, we had no, like, oh, am I supposed to care? This is just a random person. Well, the reason they focused on her so much is because that woman is the same person who was in the photograph that the main character was looking at earlier, with one big difference. She looks way fucking younger.
Okay.
Oh, and another thing, she might be the president of the United States, because the picture that he's looking at is almost certainly in the Oval Office. So what I take from all this, main character either married to or his mother is the president of the United States. And there's some fucked up time distortion thing that's completely dismantling all of reality in human society. And people are trying to cope with this, trying to, survive in this world where time doesn't matter anymore. And some people are probably aging themselves to death, like we saw in, I think, the second trailer, where we saw one of those weird monster things actually kill somebody, and we saw him aging rapidly. Mm-hmm. Or they're getting younger because time just, like, fuck the idea of linear time anymore. So basically, there was a lot of stuff in that trailer that we did learn if you really pay attention, but it just raises even more questions, as I'm sure you're pondering right now.
Bro, I'm not even going to try to figure it out. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It's not that I don't care about that game. It's just that I know enough about Kojima to just not try and I wouldn't say outsmart him, but anticipate him. He is the embodiment of life finds a way. He will find a way to perplex us all. And I'm just enjoying the perplex. And although I really did enjoy what you were talking about and like tying everything together, I saw it once and I'm just like, still have no idea what this is about, but I'm fine with what it looks like, and I'm happy to see like what the game comes out as. So that, yeah.
But yeah, in short, just to sum it up, the game is about timey-wimey bullshit and certain people who can affect this timey-wimey bullshit. That's the best way to describe what Death Stranding is apparently about.
I'm about that. Would you like to move on to Microsoft? Because this could be probably a quick conversation. Halo Infinite. I mean,
what even is that? Is it just a new Halo game? Is it an MMO? What is it?
It's supposed to be Halo 6. They said that I've heard rumors that it's like returning to more of an open world feel, like a la Combat Evolved, but I don't know. I mean, at this point, I care so little about the Halo franchise that they either need to do a massive redirection like they did with God of War style, or they need to just let it die, which they'll never do.
Now, why? Why do you care so little about Halo?
Because I just don't. Because I got 4, and 4 was donkey poop, and they just milked the shit out of it. And once Bungie left, I mean, most of the people had already left Bungie by the time that 343 took over. But 4 was just such like a flop sweat of a game. It was just dumb. Nothing about that game stuck with me. Like, not a damn thing. The multiplayer was underwhelming. The story was underwhelming. And it's fine. It wasn't like an awful game. It was just like Halo used to mean something. Like I get angry because I wasn't even ever the biggest Halo fan, but like I used to be like, oh, like Halo, like seeing Halo 2 and seeing Halo 3 and playing Halo 3. Like you got a real high from playing that game, especially multiplayer Forge. And I just, by the time that I got to 4, I was just like, this just isn't interesting anymore. And that's sad because it was their flagship franchise. So that's why I'm kind of like, whatever. We already talked about Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Is that right?
Yeah. One of the samurai games.
Yeah, and I one thing I noticed about that game, the verticality looks awesome. I still have yet to play or beat any Soulsborne game, so I can't really comment on that. It looks like it's going to kick my ass if I do play it, but it is another samurai game, so that's cool. What else? Kingdom Hearts 3, pass because I don't care, although I've heard those games are great. Maybe I'll try 3 and just get into it. I don't know.
I cannot parse a single iota of what the fuck is happening.
I can't either.
It's like I remember as a very little kid, I was reading, I think it was Game Informer or Nintendo Power or something, and reading about that thinking, oh, this is so cool. It's about some kid who gets to, go on adventures with Disney people, and it's kind of Japanese, and Japan is cool. And now looking at it, like, I mean, I'm not hating, and I'm not saying that just to, not to make people angry, because if I was hating on something, I would just fucking hate on it. But like, I don't know enough about the appeal of that game. I will say it looks like, holy shit, the environment and the gameplay is diverse as hell.
Right.
Because there's like, they have all-out naval combat just for the Pirates of the Caribbean world they go to.
Well, they spent like what two decades working on it, so it should be good.
Yeah, that's a good point. But like the whole like, it's like Final Fantasy, and like not like Final Fantasy 15, like the really, really anime Final Fantasy bullshit that people cringe at mixed with Disney. And it's just all these weird tonal shifts and bad acting. And I couldn't jive with it based on what I saw.
Not to mention, that was legitimately some of the worst voice acting I've ever heard for a major game. And I think part of the problem was that there was no sound effects. I noticed that when they first released the trailer for it for the Square Enix show, I was like, what the hell is going on? And then it was very noticeable that there's just no sound effects. So it's just like stuff was going on, there was music, and then it was just somebody like, oh, Sora! And then it was just like, what the So, anyways,
that was actually a really good impression.
See, I missed my calling in life. Apparently, should have been a voice actor. Gears 5, Gears Tactics,
I don't
Gears
care.
Pop. So we'll go in order of what I care about least to most. Pop, Tactics, 5. Pop, I don't care. Again, Gears is another
Tactics.
No, Gears Tactics. There's 3 games: Gears 5,
okay.
Gears Tactics, and Gears Pop. Gears is another game that I feel like suffered from the hand of Microsoft. It's like Halo. It's the same thing. I remember when Gears 1 and 2 came out, it was a big deal. And then by the time 3 came out, I remember playing, I think it was like whatever Call of Duty was out at the time, and then going back to Gears like 3 after maybe 3 or 4 months after the game came out, and it was like a ghost town. So again, it's just another one of those series that was in desperate need of a redirect, and I don't feel like they did enough to redirect it or to add something interesting or new, so whatever. I mean, if you're excited, great. I wasn't terribly impressed with what we saw. It looked like, overdramatic, super testosterone people all over again.
But let's not beat around the bush. Let's get to, I would say, the heart of E3 2018. Probably the thing that I was most anticipating, and the thing that you were also most anticipating, if not for, the possibility of a new Metroid game. I'm talking, of course, which did not happen. And, Brash was crying about it. He called me many times late in the middle of the night, just sobbing to me, and I had to comfort him, but we've gotten past it. But I'm talking, of course, about Cyberpunk 2077. Holy shit, Lark, what the hell was that?
That was everything I've ever wanted in a video game. No, just kidding.
No, I'm fucking serious. That was everything I wanted. I mean, realistically want in a video game, and a little bit more. Remember what we were saying last week? And we were both kind of like, oh, we're overhyping it a bit. And we were like, oh, I'm hoping that, it's really heavy on the role-playing elements, and we'll be able to make our own backstories, like in...
We didn't talk about it then, but nudity is really important.
Nudity is always very important to us.
Very important.
For those of you who don't know, nudity is very important to both of us. It's something that lies deep in our hearts and in other organs of ours, and I feel like it's very important to know that Cyberpunk 2077 will feature full frontal nudity, and I'm very happy to hear that. But joking aside, and we're not really joking, that game I feel like that was one of the one things that we were almost completely accurate about in our predictions.
I was going to say that's
because
true.
It's almost everything I wanted. You make your own character.
Whoa. You're getting ahead of yourself. So what you're talking about is two different things. There was the 2.5 minute trailer that they showed during the Microsoft conference, right? And then there was the 50 minute or so demo that they showed behind closed doors, okay?
Right.
So the 2.5 minute trailer showed off a couple things about the game. It showed off the setting, the aesthetic, certainly some of the music, I would hope. The music I am really, really looking forward to. I've heard rumors that Perturbator, which is a popular, I'm going to screw up the genre, synthwave artist, darkwave artist.
Just call it electronic. That covers everything.
Electronic. And then there was a 50-minute behind closed doors demo that a lot of people are talking about. A lot of people. I saw a 20-minute interview with Mike Pondsmith, Angry Joe, and one of the game's developers.
Yeah, me too.
And one of the biggest things that they were talking about, like the key features to take away from that demo are first-person perspective, which has upset some people, but anyone that really thinks about it would understand. And I think you would definitely agree, being an Elder Scrolls fan, that first-person for RPGs can lead to some crazy immersion. Immersion that's not possible with third-person perspectives.
First person for me is the natural default for an RPG, and I know that's not the reality of the situation. I know most RPGs are third person or isometric, which I hate isometric perspectives, but we'll talk about that another day. But just based on what I grew up with and what just makes sense to me and what I look for in an RPG, which is immersion, atmosphere, and all of that stuff, first person makes sense to me. So I'm psyched for it, honestly, because I want to get up close. Like, I'll say this, I want to get up close and see everything in that city. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to for me. But you were saying?
I was saying that I think that the third-person view, you were saying you really think the RPGs, like... Okay, so what I'm trying to say is with third-person perspective, a lot of times it has to do with the tactical perspective. So that's why games that were born out of, like, the Dungeons & Dragons mold, like Baldur's Gate, even like Fallout, which wasn't really born out of D&D, but Fallout, like 1 and 2 had the isometric perspective because there's more tactics involved. And I think it was, and also technology finally caught up so that we could have some really nice first-person RPGs. But the point is, anyone that's calling this a first-person shooter needs to be slapped. Like, it's not a first-person shooter. The devs went to great lengths to distinguish it from first-person shooters, saying that this is not a first-person shooter. So
it's a first-person game with shooting in it. And I know some of you people out there are going to be like pissed at me, like, well, come on, Trip. Obviously, it's a first-person shooter because what you just described is what a first-person shooter is.
No.
But what I mean by that is not just the connotation, because a lot of people are taking issue with the connotation of first-person shooting, which is part of it. But it's also the fact that this really is a role-playing game first. And when I say that it's a first-person game with shooting in it, I mean that very literally, because there's also a full melee system. There's also ways to avoid combat altogether. The focus isn't necessarily on guns in the game. So it's really not accurate calling it a shooter at all. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, back to just the basic features of the game. You got, like, just like I was saying, there's multiple ways to approach objectives. Last time, Lark, you were talking about the difference between gameplay choice and, role-play choice. Like how, you're kind of sick of people talking about, player choice, and they're just talking about stuff like, in Dishonored, which is great, but, it's just, do you choose to be stealthy or do you choose to go in guns blazing? Right. Well, Cyberpunk 2077 has both of these. You do get to choose how you want to approach a conflict. There's the 3 classes from the original pen and paper RPG, which you can mix and match between the solo, which is the combat specialist, the techie, which is like an engineer, and the netrunner, which is the hacker. And so there's different ways to approach objectives, but there's also branching storylines. There's dialogue systems. There's consequences to your actions. So we have the best of both worlds there. This is truly, according to them, a role-playing game first. And that's what I was looking for.
So I would say, I would agree with everything you're saying. I don't really feel the need to chime in on that other than to say I'm happy that we were somewhat close with it. I kind of... the other thing, actually, I do want to add that the background matters too somehow. Like your background, whatever background you create matters in the game, which I'm all for. I think we've both had problems in games where, like, you choose a different race in Skyrim and they treat you exactly the same. Like, it's really it's immersion breaking when you can play a game with multiple characters and multiple builds and it plays exactly the same way. It shouldn't. It really shouldn't. And to me, the one thing that I think I'm most excited for with Cyberpunk 2077 isn't the first person perspective. It isn't the boobies, despite what I'm saying earlier. It's the city. It's the care and the effort that they've gone through to bring this city to life. The various different sections of the city, the various characters within the city itself being a character. I heard in that interview with Mike Pondsmith and Angry Joe that verticality is really critical in this game, where there's multiple levels in the city and that you're going to be traversing up and down a lot more than just out. Like Witcher 3 was all about the breadth of where you could go. And this game is all about the height and depth of where you can go. So you're going to see, hopefully, something like Coruscant from Star Wars, where you have the slums in the lower levels, and then as you work your way up, it gets nicer and maybe a little less dangerous, or dangerous in a different way. Like you get noticed by authorities or something like that.
I've always wanted to experience a city like that up close. I've always wanted to experience a mega city. Keep going.
No, so that's what I'm excited for, is that they have spent a lot of time working on building this city because, The Witcher 3, as much as I love it, I was reading a comment maybe today or yesterday that was talking about how some of the people... This person was essentially saying that the cities kind of fell short in Witcher 3, which I would agree with. I remember going to Oxenfurt especially and just feeling like there wasn't nearly the amount of opportunities you had out in the wild. And to me, The Witcher 3, and that's fine, because The Witcher 3 was a lot more about, the journey across from one city to the next. I wish that they had done a little bit more to bring the cities to life, but for this game, the city has to be alive, because that seems like, from what I've heard, that's where you spend all your time. There are no missions. There is no gameplay outside of the city. So they really got to do a good job of, and that was my problem. I don't remember 5 having this problem, but 4 definitely had this problem. GTA 4, I remember driving through that city, and aside from just the pain of how bad those car controls were, at least for me, it just felt like all those buildings were just nothingness. It just felt like impediments. Like, that's why I preferred Red Dead Redemption, because Red Dead Redemption was pockets of civilization and then just wide open spaces. So when you were traveling from one place to the next, you weren't running into other cars or getting chased by cops or any of these other things. Like, I would never just stop randomly to see. And I'm not big on stunt jumps or anything like that, so I never did that with the GTA games. But I'm trying to say is, like, GTA 4 city did not, it felt big, but it felt kind of lifeless. And to me, if they can make a city of a similar size, but bring it to life and really have you looking at every single detail within the city, especially if it relates to like minor quests or loot or something along those lines. I mean, there's just so many levels that they can work down.
To your point, though, you mentioned Red Dead Redemption's towns, and I would say one of the best parts of those towns is that there is actually stuff to do in them. Like, I always felt like there were a lot more role play opportunities in Red Dead Redemption's towns than like in anywhere in what's it called, Liberty City, or even really Los Santos. Like, there's always like card games, or you can go into the bar and get drunk, or you can have a standoff with the sheriff. There's always something to do in there. Yeah. So I see what you're saying, and it makes a world. Yeah, the knife game. There's so much, and it makes a world of difference to have, like, even if they're just mini games, like, come on, those really add life to the world and give you stuff to do.
Well, I think one other game series we can point to, and I've never played it, but I've heard that it does a great job of this, is the Yakuza series, which I've actually thought about getting into.
I've heard that too.
But there's just a plethora of mini games. Anyway, so the bottom line is, I think if they can manage to find a way to make sure that playthroughs are not the same, so you don't feel like you're just playing through with a different weapon set, you're actually playing through the game completely differently. I think we're almost there. I don't think the hype is unwarranted. I do think that this game's going to offer a lot that we haven't seen before. I don't think it's going to be the greatest game ever made, because at the end of the day, games are subjective, and your opinion of a game will change depending on what point in life you are and how many games you've played. So for me to say, I think this is going to be the greatest game of all time, or my favorite game of all time, that's just silly. You know what I mean? But I do feel like it's going to be a game that offers opportunities that we haven't seen before, at least not at this scale. And for that, I am truly excited. So I think if you have any final words, now would be the time, and then we can move on to Ubisoft, EA, and Bethesda, your favorite.
Oh, well, before we do move on from Microsoft, there were and this will kind of overlap with some of the other studios that we'll talk about, but Microsoft had a lot of shit to show, and I'll say that I feel like that was a good work for them. They had a lot of stuff to show. They really focused on the games. I will say just a couple highlights and lowlights for me. Metro Exodus. I'm kind of interested in that. We saw way too many post-apocalyptic games, but I've always been kind of a fan of the Metro series, and seeing this game kind of move out of the metros and more into the surface world is very interesting to me. I like that world. I love to see what they do next. What else is there? The Division 2. Does anyone give a shit, buddy?
No, I don't.
Does anyone care? Like, it didn't. I mean, the Division 1 was like nothing for me. It just felt like Destiny, which I already didn't like, without any of the things that made Destiny interesting, and the same bullet sponges that just felt even more unrealistic in a realistic world. So yeah, I don't know about that. Battlefield 5, I mean, that game's gonna be good, but I mean, it's Battlefield. Like, you know what you're gonna get from that, I'd say.
I'm just gonna say it straight up. I'm not a Battlefield fan, and I've tried and tried and tried and tried and tried to get into this series. I've tried with 3. The only game I think I actually really enjoyed was Bad Company 2, because I felt like, to me, Battlefield is running around for 5 minutes looking for anybody and then getting shot in the back of the head. That is what every Battlefield game boils down to for me, which is I'm not good enough to get better at the game, and everyone else is better than me, and it's just not a fun time. So that's my personal problem. I'm not saying it doesn't look good. It's just that, I don't know, like going back to the World War II setting, I don't know. They did have 1943, I guess. Actually, I should rephrase that. 1943 was my favorite game, mainly because of how bite-sized it was. It felt like a smaller game, and I don't know. So take back what I said about Bad Company 2, but 1943 was my favorite, partly because the maps are smaller and just the way it was set up. But anyways, sorry, I interrupted you. Battlefield 5.
Oh, no, it's cool.
Kind of meh for me.
Also, speaking of 5s, we also had Devil May Cry 5, which, I mean, looked cool to me. And I'm going to piss off everybody, probably including my buddy here, by saying that I actually liked DMC.
I did too. 100%.
Okay, good. So,
Ninja Theory did a good job. I don't care about the characters redesigns. I thought.
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, I never was attached to Dante as a character because, you know, I'm not that into anime. I don't have anything against it. But when I saw Devil May Cry, and I saw Dante, I'm like, oh, he's, you know, anime boy, and it's kind of corny. It's kind of corny in the anime way. And then I see this, and it's like, okay, this is the new Dante. It's kind of corny in a brooding kind of, you know, punk way. And I'm like, okay, it's both things are kind of corny, but one flavor of corniness at least resonates with me a bit more, and I find a little charming. So I kind of really did like emo twink Dante a lot. And I thought the environments in the game were amazing. Yeah. I loved how shameless some of it was, like that dubstep level, which I still really like. I loved the idea of this. I love any series where there's like a secret world beneath the world we know, which is why I love Harry Potter. I love this idea, like there's this secret war between angels and demons right under our nose, and demons secretly control everything. And Bill O'Reilly is just a massive, just gargantuan, disgusting demon, which I mean he is in real life.
About that, was he in that?
Yeah, right.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
They predicted it, man. But yeah, I mean. this was obviously going to happen because of the big backlash. But I do hope that they don't completely forsake what DMC did, because I liked it. And if you don't, fine. But again, for me, it's just trading one flavor of corny for another flavor of corny. So it's whatever to me.
It's not whatever to me, because when I was in high school, this is 100% true. I was in love with the character design of Dante, not the character, but I thought he was like the coolest dude ever, and I legitimately wanted to move to California. This is when I was 15. I wanted to move to California, to dye my hair white, to buy a red trench coat, and to get purple contacts, and literally become Dante. I'm not kidding. And here's the best part. I never had played any of the games. Not a single one. I had read some of the comics, but I just thought he was that cool of a character. Because I watched my friends play and seeing him like jump around and shoot in the air. And I was just like, this guy is the coolest. I want to become that. And so that's why I say, like, you're like, I don't care about his visual design. I was like, I literally wanted to become him. And I was still okay with the fact that they changed it, and then mainly because the combat was so much fun and the level design was. But I don't want to go.
I just want to go on record pointing out your hypocrisy that you almost disowned me for the vape incident the other week, and if I had come to you saying this shit, I can't even imagine what you would have said and done to me.
I wanted to become a real life anime. So yeah, that looks fun. Any other games for Microsoft?
There's Just Cause 4, which, I like the Just Cause series, so I don't have any. I mean, it's weird because I like that series.
That series, though. You want to know why?
Really? Why not?
Just Cause.
Shut the fuck up, dude. See, I like it because it's one of those games that's just. Sometimes I just want a shameless open world game, and I really like Just Cause 2 because it's fucking beautiful. There's like. It's in a lot of ways, it's the type of game that I hate because it's a big open world with nothing to do but kill things, and I hate that. Anytime I have an open world, I want activities to do. I want mini games. It's one of the reasons why I liked Watch Dogs, the first one, despite all the problems, because there was just so many little like arcade games and shit you could do in there. So I love mini games, but Just Cause is that kind of series where like if I just want to turn my brain off and just explore a gargantuan, impossibly large, but still detailed and beautiful looking world and just blow shit up, I know Just Cause is there for me. So that's also why I'm not hyped for it at all, because I'm like, yeah, it's going to be another cool world for me to explore. Okay, I'm down. Yeah. There's Battletoads, which Battletoads was like way before my time, so I have absolutely no connection to it whatsoever. But I know it's like, it was one of the hardest games ever made, not because of any good reason, but because it was a rental game, and they used to try and make rental games get harder so that you couldn't beat them in one rental session. But the people who made Battletoads went too far with it.
Yeah.
So that's the extent of what I know about Battletoads. But there's the Cuphead thing, and there was all in all, I would say that Microsoft had a pretty good conference. But let's move on.
Well, I was gonna say the most shocking thing to me was that Ninja Theory was bought up. Like Microsoft bought Ninja Theory, which is interesting, and I'm almost like kind of late to be buying out game studios for your current console. So I'm thinking maybe they're trying to ramp up for the next one. But either way, I hope it works out. Moving on, I'm gonna save Bethesda for last. Let's go from Ubisoft to EA to Bethesda. I think that would be the way.
Okay, can I start with Ubisoft because I need to just. I have all of this pent up sexual energy over Beyond Good and Evil 2 that I just need to release.
Sexual energy from...
You have no idea what that monkey did to me. That game, let me preface it by saying this. I am so wrapped up in the hype of this game, and it's very hard for me to pull myself away from it. So I'll just say there is a big chance that this game won't end up being anything like what they're saying it is. But if they do pull off what they say they're pulling off, and I feel like they have a very good team to do it, then it might be one of my favorite games ever. How much do you know about Beyond Good and Evil 2?
Well, I know that you're sexually aroused by it, apparently.
I am extraordinarily aroused right now, just talking about it.
I don't know very much. I've never played the first game. I saw the
I haven't either.
Trailers. The trailer for this E3 was pretty cool, and I mean, I like the idea of like a space opera with like quirky characters, and I don't know, I'm definitely interested. I want to see some gameplay. You know, I want to know more about what the game is about. Like,
We got to see some gameplay. It was brief, but we got to see some combat, for example, and basically just not even getting into the story or the lore of Beyond Good and Evil, which is also really cool, but that's not what I'm here for right now. The game is basically, there's going to be a ton of planets you can visit, fully realized planets with different environments, cities, and whatnot. You saw that massive, like, kind of Indonesian looking city in the trailers, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, first off, that's my fucking aesthetic, so I'm all about that shit. You know me, I love, like, any kind of, like, science fantasy stuff that's outside of, traditional, European or just normal modern cultures. So that's really cool for me, and just being able to get up close and see that city. But here's the thing that makes Beyond Good and Evil both really cool and really concerning for me, because I don't think it will work out as well as they're saying it will. So you're in that massive gargantuan city, which presumably has a shit ton of things to do, hopefully some mini games, hopefully a lot of people to fight, hopefully quests and stuff like that, like a regular open world action game. And what if I told you that I could go into a spaceship and fly up off that planet into the solar system and then just fly in real time to any other planet I want to? And there's more stuff there. There's more stories. There's more environments. There's more cities. There's more wilderness. There's all sorts of stuff there. And there's a mothership that you own that has all your friends on it. And you're a bunch of space pirates going around, causing trouble and getting into misadventures and shit. It's in a lot of ways like my absolute ideal game. Because we've talked about this before in like the early episodes of the podcast. My ideal game would be one where it's just about me just being able to explore a fully realized world or worlds and just having shit to do there. I don't even need a like overarching narrative, though that would be fine. Just let me explore different worlds, different cultures. Let me go up in space and fly wherever the fuck I want to. Let me feel like this world is endless and full of things to do and see and experience. And again, I know I'm wrapped up in the hype, but let me tell you why I'm wrapped up in the hype. Because normally, if you were to show me something like that, it'd be like, yeah, fuck off, man. None of that's going to happen. But the guy behind this is a well-known industry figure. It's Michel Ancel, the guy who made Rayman and the guy who made the original Beyond Good and Evil. It's and he has a very good reputation in the industry. It's not quite like it's not quite the same thing as when I heard that, CD Projekt Red is doing Cyberpunk 2077. But if anybody from Ubisoft was going to make a series like this, probably the only one I would remotely trust is Michel Ancel. So that's why and they've been very open with development. They've been, like that's another good sign where they're really like showing you, okay, where we are. We're going to show you some gameplay of this. We're going to let you see, and they keep updating us. And it's giving me some glimmer of hope that the game I've always wanted since I was a very small child may eventually be real.
Well, not to dash your hopes, but what you were describing sounds awfully similar to No Man's Sky. But
yep, yes, it does. But remember, what's the difference between No Man's Sky and Beyond Good and Evil 2? No Man's Sky was made by a bunch of fucking nobodies.
Damn, it's harsh, but accurate.
Yeah, fuck No Man's Sky.
Okay, strong words.
Do you disagree?
No, I'm not going to say fuck them. I'm just going to say I played that game for 2 hours, and I've never lost interest so quick in the game. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is cool, but did I tell you that I almost got a chance to play that game, but then Bethesda fucked it up for me? Yeah, I think you did, and you just got a little doohickey thing. I got a bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum out of it, out of getting out of line to go to my Bethesda appointment when I was 15 minutes away from playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and then they didn't even show me a screenshot of Fallout 76. Boo. I'm excited. I still haven't played Origins, and I mean, it looks fun, but I think at this point, if you're an Assassin's Creed fan, you're going to play Assassin's Creed, and if you're not into the series and you don't like it, it's probably not going to be the game to shake it up. It seems like Origins was the game to shake it up. Well, no. I mean, I loved Origins, but Origins was a stepping stone between the older games and this one. That's actually specifically what they told me when I was at E3. Oh, okay. Here's the thing. Odyssey is the game changer. Really?
And yes, and I can say that, like, not even like speculating, like definitively, whether it's good or bad in the long run, this is the game changer that will completely revamp the entire series. Because Ubisoft said to everybody, fuck it, Assassin's Creed is an RPG. And I don't just mean like how Origins was, and again, I love that game, which was like, oh, it's a traditional Assassin's Creed game with RPG mechanics. No, I mean there are dialogue options, multiple endings, there are branching paths and storylines. It's a full role-playing game. Ubisoft now has a dedicated role-playing series.
Cool. Well,
And
I'm fine
I
with
think
that.
I'm fine with that too. I think that's a really great thing for the series. Because if I were to tell you, oh, I'm playing this game, which is like historical tourism, which is very heavily focused on exploring, different periods in history and, going through stories and meeting people there, you'd probably assume it was a role-playing game to begin with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm all for it. I'm excited for it. I got to see a lot. I saw so much of that game without being able to play it because there were people right in front of me who were playing it for literally hours as I was circling around them like sharks trying to get into that area. And then Bethesda fucked it up for me. Todd, are you listening, Todd? But anyway, yeah, that game is... What really sold me was when they told me that it would have multiple endings. Because just like everybody, I was like, okay, they're going to have some dialogue options and none of it's going to matter. It's just going to be window dressing. It's going to be like the Old Republic MMO, or it's going to be like, Skyrim or something. It's just going to be window dressing. No, once they told me, no, there will be multiple endings, I'm like, okay, you guys are actually kind of serious about this. You're basically turning Assassin's Creed into kind of a Mass Effect style RPG, and I'm cool with that. You do you. I'll wait until that game comes out. Hopefully it's really good. And if it is what you're telling me it is, it will probably be my favorite Assassin's Creed game.
Nice. All right, cool. Starlink. I don't remember the full subtitle, but Starlink confused the hell out of me because all I saw was this Fox clip from it. So I'm like, is this a new Star Fox game? Why are they calling it Starlink? Why not Star Fox? And then I saw like another trailer for it, and there was no Star Fox in it. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? So then I finally watched like the full trailer with the conference where they're like, oh, hey, and then there's Star Fox, and he's in our Skylanders spaceship game. And I was like, okay. And that was it. And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
it looked,
let me tell you,
kind of fun, but I'm like, it really is going to depend on how they do pricing for those ships.
Yeah, I saw so many hours of footage of that on repeat while I was at E3, because that was like Ubisoft had like the biggest stage. They had the biggest booth, you could call it, in one of the two kind of auditoriums. So they just had these massive screen TVs just playing like Beyond Good and Evil 2, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and Starlink over and over and over again. I saw so much of Starlink, and I still don't understand what the fuck that game is. All I know is they're apparently doing kind of like a Skylanders thing where like you buy the parts for the ship.
And you build the ship, yeah.
And you build the ship, which I don't get the appeal of. I understand Skylanders because, like, if you're either a little kid who wants to play with toys or you're an adult who's a collector, I can understand that, and I see the appeal of taking the stuff that you have and putting it in the game. I don't feel that same understanding of why you would want to do, and it just looked really awkward on top of the controller as well. I don't know, it seemed kind of clumsy, and I don't know exactly who it's for. It seems to be targeting a slightly older audience, but not like adult, and right. I don't know. It seemed kind of confusing.
Young adult audience. Let's move to EA. And before we talk about Anthem, I gotta take a deep breath because honestly, it's a little late, and I'm trying to collect my thoughts before I just shit all over this game. Really not shit all over the game, shit all over the announcement. So you probably know what I'm going to talk about, and that's not Anthem. It's Star Wars that I'm going to talk about. It has to do with the first single-player title, I think it's single-player, from EA. Okay? Now, how would you announce a game? Would you actually have some footage, maybe? Would you maybe have, like, a logo? Would you maybe have, like, a screenshot? Fuck no. If you're EA, you're just going to have Vince Zampella from Respawn Entertainment and this awkward-as-fuck interviewer talk to him about, well, I hear you've got a new project, Vince.
Not even on stage. Let's make that clear. Not even on stage. In the
crowd.
audience.
In the crowd. Yes, it's a Star Wars game. Oh, excellent. So, what is it going to be about? Well, you're going to be a Jedi. Well, you're going to have lightsabers. Yes. When is it set? Well, it's after the fall of the Republic. Okay, so when is that exactly for the nerds? Between 3 and 4. No shit. Okay. That's it. That's all we got. And I was just like, holy fucking shit. Like, this just made my blood boil because I'm like, EA, you are fucking up. You are fucking up at if there is a meter of fucking up from 0 to 100, you are at 200 and rising. You are just like, you have taken the Star Wars IP, you've made 2 lackluster games, you have killed a Star Wars single player game, and now this is how you announce a single player title. No footage, like they gave us a title, no screenshots, literally fucking nothing except, hey, take our word for it, it's coming. And I'm just like, fuck you, just fuck everything about you. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. I'm really angry about this because I'm just like, this is the most, I would rather have had no announcement at all. That was the most awful way you could possibly announce a Star Wars game. Any game.
See, it's a microcosm of everything that was wrong with the conference. Now, let me say this. I wrote an entire article on every single thing that was announced in this conference, and Lark, I couldn't remember a single thing until I was looking at it right now. And there were a lot of good games that were announced during this. There were some of those indie games that were kind of interesting. Sea of Solitude, I especially thought was kind of cool.
You talking about the EA conference?
Yeah, the EA
general?
Play conference.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll talk about Sea of Solitude in a minute or two. But my point is, this whole thing was just kind of disastrous. Like, it felt like the entire thing was like, we're human. Please trust us. We're not a big evil company. We're so sorry for being terrible with Star Wars and all of our games. And they expected us to clap and cheer for, gambling loot boxes. Yeah, the fucking Jeb Bush of the games industry. And we'll get to Command and Conquer Rivals in a second. But yeah, it just, that whole Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order thing encapsulated everything wrong with the EA Play conference. They took what should have been the biggest announcement, something that could have been on par, maybe I'm exaggerating just a tiny bit, something that almost could have been on par with the Elder Scrolls 6 announcement at the Bethesda conference. A new single-player Star Wars game after we just found out that one of them, the one that Visceral was making, was canceled, after we haven't had a single-player Star Wars game that I know of in years.
Yeah.
You took that, and from an awesome period, because, dude, for years I've been saying I want to play a Star Wars game, preferably an RPG, that takes place after the fall of the Jedi Order, like right after that scene where the clones destroy the Jedi Temple, and you're just one of, like, a young Jedi Padawan who just fucking escaped from there and is now just on the streets of Coruscant trying to figure out what the fuck do I do next. I've been waiting for a game like that. And for them to have presented what should have been their biggest announcement in that clumsy, lackluster, and I'm not mad at the guy from Respawn. He seemed like a nice guy. And he seemed like he was put on the spot. Like, this was really awkward for him.
He didn't want to do it. I guarantee
he didn't want to do this. Like, you could see, like, that nervous laughter. Like, I could tell, like, it seemed like he was proud of what he's done so far, and I'm sure, like, he's really proud of the game, but he's like, you want me to talk? We're not even close to, we don't have anything. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 100% on EA for making that decision.
Exactly.
In fact, I think he tweeted about it too, about the fact that he didn't want to do it. Or someone else was like, we pulled his arm to get him to do it. I'm like, whatever. It doesn't matter. It was a shitty way to announce a Star Wars game. You were talking about the indie title. Sea of Solitude looks great. So all the indie stuff was more interesting than any of their bigger stuff.
Yeah,
I will say that.
And that says a lot. Because it's not being made by EA.
Well, yeah. And Command and Conquer Mobile, I'm just like,
oh my God. Can I just, like, set the scene for this?
Good
Because I was watching this live. So, imagine this conference is going on. We're just getting into the thick of it. They haven't shown a lot of gameplay of anything. You're kind of starting to get a little antsy. We just saw, some cool indie games, but mostly they've just been showing some sports stuff, which is like two things. One, I don't care, but I understand that other people care. But two, they're not really showing anything new or interesting even for the people who would care. So it's still just a drag for everybody. So now we're getting to gameplay of something. Okay, awesome. Immediately we find that it's a mobile game. Lost all interest. Okay, whatever. Then they spend 9 fucking minutes with these two, were they YouTubers or something? 2 people that I don't know, I've never heard of, with stupid nicknames. And I know I'm just baiting myself because people are going to start laughing at my stupid nickname. But with stupid nicknames coming on stage, playing this game, and they haven't told us what it's called yet. I feel like they're ashamed that this is a Command and Conquer game because they just slipped that in at the end. Now, I have no attachment to Command and Conquer, but I am aware that it is a storied franchise of RTS games. So to see them turn that shit into some kind of Clash of Clans bullshit,
it was awful.
And to spend 9 minutes on it, dude. What the fuck were you? Who was that for, EA? That's what kept coming into my mind for the whole EA Play conference. Who is this for? You're not going to convince us you're human. We know you're reptilian troglodytes. Don't even try. Like, who is this for? You're showing us games that the people who are watching I have nothing against people who love mobile games. If you love mobile games, then fuck yeah, dude. More power to you. I highly doubt that you were watching E3 if your main interest is mobile games.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm wrong about that, please let me know. But who was this for? It's just so out of touch, so completely beyond the pale that they spent more time on this mobile Clash of Clans. And it wasn't even like the Bethesda thing we'll talk about later, which I have my own problems with that. But hey, that at least looks really good. As much as I don't give a shit about mobile games, that looked really good. And they didn't spend nearly as much time on that.
No.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
So, okay. I didn't watch the whole conference. I watched just the trailer.
And we haven't even gotten into Anthem yet.
Let's get into Anthem then. There's so many things that could be said about Anthem, but we are definitely going for a while on this. So let me just say it this way: I'm primarily a single player gamer. You know this. I've played some multiplayer games, Rocket League, more recently Fortnite, and I don't have a problem with multiplayer games. I just don't tend to. I don't know. They don't hook me. For the sake of morbid curiosity, I watched the trailer where they actually had gameplay footage, and they're like, aside from the horrible, horrible conversations that they always use for these stupid fucking gameplay videos, God, that game looks slow. Like, I'm like they're like in a jetpack and they're flying through canyons and shit. And my first, I have a lot of thoughts going through my head, but my first couple of thoughts were like, one, this is really kind of boring. Like, I would have expected jetpacking around a lush, dense world would be cooler, but I just feel like A, it's so slow. And B, once I get to the combat section, it's so slow. And C, I have no clue what this game is about. Like, no clue what the, basically just the premise of the game. I don't know what any of it's about. The character designs don't make sense because at first I thought there was like you said, like a Destiny vibe for it. But then they have like these big old giants, and I'm just like, and then
they tried to explain it. I'll just chime in and say they tried to explain the world, and it was slightly interesting. And knowing BioWare, I was like, okay, I know these people can make a world. These people made Dragon Age out of nothing, and you saw just how dense that IP was after one game. If these people want to, they can make the world of Anthem incredible. But here's my issue, and I think you were kind of getting at this point too. Here's my issue with Anthem in terms of the premise. And it's the same issue I have with things like The Division, and the same problem I have with things like Destiny. I just know this is just going to be another loot 'em up where whatever story you come up with is you're just playing around the story. You're not going to be really engaging with anything. There's not going to be many interesting characters. It's just going to feel like a bunch of side quests with the main quest missing, because what the game is about is just a Skinner box. I know these games. We've been having them for the past 3 or 4 years now, and they weren't interesting with Destiny. We saw where that shit went. The Division flopped. It saw some resurgence toward the end, but that was mostly people leaving Destiny to go to The Division.
True.
And BioWare clearly had this idea when Destiny was being made, and now they're at the tail end of this bandwagon, and no one gives a flying fuck. And this is what BioWare is now. We went from Dragon Age and Mass Effect to chasing a dying bandwagon, and the wrong bandwagon at that. And I'll just say one more thing about what you said about how jetpacking around the world looked really boring. Did you also notice, I'm not sure if it was you who said this to me, but it was someone who did. The world looks really linear. Like it all felt like corridors and canyons.
Oh, yeah.
Just like you were saying, like,
I
it just
didn't
felt
say
like we
that,
were going
but...
forward. And I'm like, what's the point of this being like a semi-open world if this is all there is? Like, it almost felt like I don't know if you ever played the original Fable game. That game was technically open world, but the whole thing just felt like you were going down a trail, like just a single continuous trail going forward or backward. That's what it felt like to me. And I'm like, guys, that was fine in like the mid 2000s, but what the hell are we doing? Like, just everything about that game was so underwhelming. And by the time, and they presented it in the worst way possible. Like you were saying before, just how can you make a game like that look boring? But they did.
Yeah. No, I think I don't really want to. What I'm saying is, like, I'm not surprised by what we saw, and I don't think the reaction was from, obviously we're just two people, but I think I don't hear a lot of hype about this game. I think everyone else is just as lukewarm or colder than, like, as we are. We're kind of not interested at all. A lot of people are just kind of lukewarm, like, whatever. The big one, Bethesda. I'm going to talk about what I was looking forward to. Are things that I enjoyed. I think I did watch this conference, most of it, like half of it at least. Doom Eternal, hell yes. No gameplay footage, but I'm just excited for the prospect of going back and playing Doom. Rage 2, it hasn't sold me yet. It looks cool. It hasn't sold me yet.
I can talk about Rage 2 because that game, I'm not sold in the sense that I know it's going to be good. I'm about as sold as I possibly can be for someone who had no interest in a Rage 2, somebody who was like, who the fuck wants a Rage 2? It sold me as much as it could. And
you mean the gameplay trailer, or did you actually get to play it?
The gameplay trailer. Okay. And if you want me to, I can tell you why.
Sure, go ahead.
Just like I said, like, I had no interest in the original Rage. It kind of flopped. When I heard they were doing a Rage 2, the main thing I was thinking, aside from I don't care about this, is how are you going to make another post-apocalyptic first-person shooter and give it its own personality aside from Fallout? So, I think it was Angry Joe who described this game's personality and the gameplay best. He said it's pink Doom. And that's the best way to describe it. It felt like if you mixed Doom with Mad Max with Far Cry and gave it just this neon, just crazy, colorful, weird aesthetic to it that's kind of 80s, kind of not, very punk vibe going on. And it just felt kind of just fun and engaging. And, there's the vehicles, there's the open world, there's the kind of tongue-in-cheek gameplay. I mean, the main character's name is Walker, and he's a ranger. Jesus Christ. I mean, we know what this game is trying to do. And the combat looked punchy, visceral, dude. There were powers. You were zipping across the screen. You were making shit explode. And I fucking love the visuals. Like, I love shit that's violent in that sense, but he's kind of silly and almost cute, and it's just kind of colorfulness and wackiness. So
You're
yeah,
a pushover,
I liked what I saw with Rage 2. I went from like not giving a shit at all and even being kind of angry at the fact that this game existed to being like, I might pick that up.
So anyways, moving on. They're doing Wolfenstein DLC, I think. The Youngblood thing.
And it takes place in the 80s.
Well, I'm actually playing through the new Colossus right now, so I'm 100% on board for that, obviously. The next two things are, we'll save the best for last. What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 first, or do you want to talk about Fallout 76 first?
I was going to say, let's talk about Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. There's not that much to say. Right.
Yeah. I will say, seeing ES6 pop up, I was just like, I actually was really excited because he's like, this is a game you guys been asking about for a long time. Maybe that was Starfield, but something else. And then he had some other thing to say about Elder Scrolls, and then like they panned and then heard the music, and I was like, yes. And I'll admit, even as much as I kind of was like, I liked Skyrim more than you did, but I'm after Fallout 4, I was feeling the fatigue. So I'm still like, I'm kind of surprised that I was that excited for it, but. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people gave them shit for not showing us anything from those last 2 games, but
whatever, man.
I feel like they earned it. They did a good job at this conference. They showed us a lot of gameplay. One thing I've been loving about Bethesda these past 2 years, they're just giving shit away the day they announce it. Like, there was just so much like, oh, and it's available now. It's available now. It's available now. You can log in and it's available for free. And I'm like, what more can you ask for E3? Like, that's what E3 is all about from a consumer perspective, man. It's Christmas for video games. And they're literally making it Christmas for video games. So I have no problem with them just saying, okay, guys, last little present. Yes, these games exist.
Right. It's more just a way to get us hyped and to say that they're looking to the future. Because you got to consider, they showed us Fallout 76, whether or not you're excited for the game or not. And then Rage 2 were the big gameplay focuses, in my opinion. And they also said that they're coming out for next-gen consoles. So it really wouldn't make sense for them to have a lot of footage to show just yet. It's more just like, be patient, it's coming, because it's been 7 years since Skyrim. So I think that was smart to at least entice us. 76.
Everything that we said about 76 in the last episode, I still feel that way. I love survival elements in my role-playing games. I've been looking for a game that's like Rust or like Conan Exiles, but, you know, actually decent and made by a big-budget studio. I don't really have faith in Bethesda to do this well. I think that, as sad as it makes me, it's good that they're just giving up on telling a story and giving up on any sort of narrative-driven roleplay, like, you know, dialogue choices and stuff like that. So they've realized that really the fun that people have in their games is all the players doing stuff. So they're just going to make a game where it's just the players interacting with each other. So, I mean, I guess. But I don't know. I don't have much. I mean, it's probably going to be a decent game, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's not a game that anybody's really asking for, or I think anyone really wanted, but it could be interesting. I'm not going to play it more than likely because I don't know. I play Bethesda games for the role-playing elements, and it just seems like to me, the biggest problem I have with that, one of the biggest problems I have with 76, they showed that whole sequence of you like building a settlement, and you can recruit people, and you can build this, and you can build that, and then they showed shit coming in and just destroying it, and then they showed nukes going off, and I'm just like, well, why am I spend all this time building something if some random Sasquatch creature can just come in and wreck my town? Like, why is that any fun? I'm not going to do that. Like, the settlement building was without a doubt the most disappointing part of Fallout 4 and the worst part of Fallout 4. So they took the worst part of Fallout 4 and turned it into a main feature for this game.
The main feature.
Yeah, the main feature. I just don't see it happening.
There are ways that this can work. The whole like, oh, I don't want my settlement to be destroyed. I brought up Conan Exiles a couple seconds ago, and they did something cool where you can basically control literally every aspect of the server, which includes, oh, can enemies destroy stuff that I built? That's an option you can turn on or off. Mm-hmm. So if they're going to have that same level of customizability in your own servers, whether they're public or private, then, I mean, that just solves that problem right there. So that's not really a problem I have, per se, but yeah, you said it best. Like, they took the worst part of Fallout 4, something that I think can be the best part of certain games. Like, I'm somebody who fucking loves The Sims, for Christ's sake. Like, so I love building when it's intuitive, when it's fun, and when it feels like it's very well tied into the game. Mm-hmm. Not the case in any way with Fallout 4. No. So I don't know why they decided to. Well, I do know why they decided to do that. I said why earlier, because they're not interested in telling a story anymore. But they better do it well. They better really overhaul that shit. And I'm positive that they will overhaul it. I don't know if the overhaul will end up being much better than what we ended up getting in 4.
Yeah, I think that's all that really can be said about it. Now, this isn't necessarily E3 related, but this is just something I kind of wanted to end on a negative note today, because why not?
Sure.
I feel like I don't want to get into a political analogy, but it's like EA and Activision are like the two major parties of the video game world, and they are just trying to out-douche each other right now. So I assume you've heard about the Call of Duty Black Ops 4 Season Pass fiasco. Have you?
I think I watched Jim Sterling talk about it this morning.
I watched. It's probably the same thing. I feel like there's going to be a reckoning. There's going to be a point.
Well,
where...
explain what happened for our viewers.
So, Activision, in their never-ending quest for more of your money, has decided that if you want a certain game mode, I'm pretty certain it's the zombie game mode, which is pretty much their most popular game mode aside from multiplayer. Although it is technically multiplayer, I think. They decided to make that part of the season pass. It gets better. In addition, you get 12 maps for this season pass, and I think different loadouts and different characters and all this other stuff. It gets even better. This season pass, as of right now, is only available through the special edition, which is like another $40 in addition to the main price of the game. So it's like $100 for this special edition. I'm pretty sure that's just a digital edition. Like, they are just redefining the lines. They're redefining scummy business practices.
In short, what you're saying is they're literally taking... It's the nightmare. They're taking stuff away from you that used to be part of the base game and trying to resell it to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought
that's completely unacceptable.
I thought we had gotten past this, and apparently we hadn't. And just proof positive that you can never assume that just because EA is kind of take the reins of being crappy, Activision's still there. You know, they're always trying to outpace each other and become the world's shittiest company, or shittiest video game company.
Well, see, they found out that gambling boxes are not a sustainable future for them, so they're trying to move back to the tried and true methods of fucking us over.
Just
that's what it comes down to.
Withholding actual game.
They're desperate. These companies have always been desperate because their business model is not sustainable. I talk about this all the time. They're spending so much money on these overproduced, underdeveloped games that they can't afford to make, and their investors are freaking out because a single bomb could destroy their entire company because of how much these games cost. So they need to make sure they recoup their profits and then some by a lot. So they keep resorting to these tactics because they're terrified, they're out of touch, and they don't know how much they can get away with. That's what it comes down to.
I like that. That's how I want to end it. EA and Activision, they're terrified, they're out of touch, and they don't know how much they can get away with.
Well, yeah, that's E3 2018. I will give a brief shout out to Bethesda for that big joke they told on us. Not that one. That one was great. I'm talking about the Elder Scrolls Blades. I'm talking about how everybody thought that they were going to have the balls to end their conference on a mobile game.
Yeah.
Everybody thought that conference was over. Everybody thought, and they presented it in a way that made you think that it was the next mainline game in the series. I was so mad. I actually started writing the article as though that was the last game that they showed. I was already seething. I was typing my fingers off. You were
a keyboard warrior ready to start firing.
I totally was. But then they kept going. I'm like, okay. So looking back on it, I will say that I don't like mobile games, but that was probably the best looking mobile game that I've personally ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And if they can, because what they're trying to do is capture the magic of old school RPGs, not just Arena and Daggerfall, though that was the examples that they gave, but also, just classic like 80s and 90s, role-playing computer games, which were all about, dungeon crawling and adventures and, stuff like that. So, I mean, it looked really cool. The combat looked kind of shitty, but I mean, it's a Bethesda game, so of course the combat looks shitty. Right. But yeah, I just wanted to give that little shout out just to give something positive on something that I'm not normally positive about, both in terms of Bethesda and in terms of mobile games. So, cool. Yeah, you just got me to say something good about a mobile game by Bethesda. So, I mean, that's rare.
What is this world coming to? And on that note, on that incredulous note, let's wrap up this E3 2018. Sir, it was a pleasure to discuss the state of the video game industry with you.
Same with you. I have been Trip.
And I am and will always be.
Are you going to say your name?
Lark.